On the topic of big companies using their money to ignore laws, I wanted to talk about Apple just full out
I can
ignoring.
jam this in if we want.
Right,
I'm all fired up about this.
Because we have like 10 more minutes to go.
I see.
think.
Yeah.
I wanted to fit this in because I know this story has been going on for a while, but it sounded like there were updates of Apple basically outright ignoring this court order to allow apps in their marketplace to off-site their payments. Like this came through Fortnite and Epic, right? Fortnite wanted to send people to a web page to purchase like V-Bucks and things in the store so that Apple didn't get to take their cut. And this has been ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, just super high level, and then you take it away, but just like super high level is like, if you buy a Fortnite skin through Fortnite on the App Store, Apple gets 30%. 30% is a lot of money. It's a huge fucking cut. They didn't really earn it. They didn't make the game. You know, they're just doing payments. So some companies, like Epic, were really pissed at this, tried to make a web store. That's like sometimes when you're like on Spotify or you're on Patreon, you go to the web store to subscribe to Lemonade Stand or whatever. And the reason is because those companies don't want to give Apple 30%. And Apple was doing a lot of shady, underhanded shit to stop you from doing this. They were like preventing you from updating your app. If you had an offsite web store, they were like deprioritizing you. They were just finding ways to make this not possible. And a judge finally said, this is fucking whack. Like, you can't do that. You're violating the spirit of the law. And that was the recent ruling. And I don't know what happened since then. Maybe Doug, you want to give an update. So.
And that is what I was going to talk about. Thank you, Aiden. Thank you. Yeah, and
you said new updates. You said new updates.
I mean, a little bit. All right, so that's the summary. For
sorry,
Apple
sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Apple is. We've already talked about this. This is old news. So again, Apple's had this monopoly. I thought what was interesting, a few pieces that maybe you aren't aware of if you've heard about this. First off, Fortnite's back. I got on my iPhone right now. It's back on.
So that's
iPhone.
new, right? Because that was not the case.
Like
a week
yesterday.
Ago. Yeah, okay.
Oh, hasn't it been off the App Store for like a
5
few years?
Yeah, years.
So after 5 years, we're fucking back. Okay, Fortnite's right here, and look at how good that looks. I don't know if the camera can zoom in on that.
How about that?
Oh, it's because it's vertical, right?
Yeah, a little vertical Fortnite, baby.
Yeah. Oh, it says you are about to use cellular data. I don't know if that's visible. And this is what was gone for 5 years.
Can you believe that?
Now, thank God we have
I'll just take a screenshot.
Can I say it's kind of base they fought it for this long because they lost so much money by doing like they were printing money on Fortnite.
You mean Epic? Yeah,
Epic lost so much money from what they could have done by just making.
Look,
a deal.
we were just talking about like USA ruining debt, and so I'm going to try to take this to the same levels to make the emotional impact of the same. Yeah, dude, Epic makes ungodly amounts of money on Fortnite, and basically Tim Sweeney has the leader of Epic, the owner of the company, who, as far as I can tell, I had a friend who worked there, really good guy who's very principled. He basically was like, we as a company are going to take the fact that we're influential with Fortnite and we have an ungodly amount of money because of Fortnite, and we are going to try to stop what Apple's doing, which is this anti-competitive shit where they don't allow anybody else to sell anything on their stores. And it's interesting, this chart here, Apple revenue, as you can maybe tell, I learned how to make charts this morning on
a lot of charts
on Google
today.
Sheets.
They're good.
So if you look at Apple's revenue, like 50% of it is selling iPhones. That's their main thing. At $200 billion a year selling iPhones. It's crazy. And then they make $96 billion on top of that from services. So this is things like the App Store, but subscription services or whatever else. And you can see Mac, iPad, wearables, those are all big. But the big thing that drives Apple is the iPhone. That's half their money every year. And the services, which is money around like services that they sell, including the App Store. And the estimates we don't know are like 60% of that services is the App Store. So if you're Apple, something like, I don't know, 10, 15% of your overall company is based on the money you make. Again, not really doing anything, but just taking 30% of everybody else's money. Yeah. It's just a tax that you're putting on. So everybody hates the tax except Apple. They love it because it just gives them $50 billion or whatever it is. It's a money printer, and they don't have to do anything. And then I am just heads up biased. I dislike Apple as a company. I dislike that they do things like this.
Get him, Aiden.
I dislike that they put these taxes on developers.
He's got
and
the
then
watch and the Mac and
they don't do anything with it. They're not investing this into like
I mean, to be clear, though, to be fair, Google's the same thing, right? There's a duopoly. Like Google's Play Store, it's 30%.
They do the same thing, but there's so much that Google does. Like I can look at what Google does and be like, they're funding DeepMind, right? And making these incredible breakthroughs with like AlphaFold. Whereas
God,
they
it's
offer
like you
so many
forgot about
services.
the fucking Vision Pro, dude.
Yeah, and then the
Fake
only
ones,
R&D, Apple hasn't
Fake
done
ones forget.
anything since Steve Jobs passed. It's been Vision Pro, which is a complete fucking flop, and AirPods. Great.
Did you
cool.
know that if AirPods
and
were
a
broken
watch.
out into their own company, they'd be
Yes.
bigger than
Shut up,
Nike?
we know. We
Did
fucking
you
know.
know?
It's their-
They'd be bigger than Nike.
Yes, as you can see in the graph, that's under wearables and accessories. It's 30. Wow, it's a huge bar, a big, beautiful bar. So it makes sense that Apple has basically had this monopoly on the system and said, "Look, it's our phones. We should do whatever we want." They make an ungodly amount of money from it, but it's a massive, massive tax on everybody else. 30%. I mean, for anybody who's run a business or grocery stores, what are their margins? It's like 1.5%, right?
like 2%, yeah.
Right? They barely make any money and they just have to make enough volume to barely get by. Most companies do not have a 30% margin. And the idea that Apple charges this, digital ones have higher margins, is fucking insane because they aren't doing anything other than processing transactions. I worked on mobile devices doing the code at EA that managed this. I've seen the actual mechanics that go into managing this stuff. It's complex. It's not 30% complex. It's like 3%.
So I have a question. With the way this lawsuit has played out.
Wait, more energy. We got to match the debt.
The way this layout of this has played out, this problem affects us. We have a Patreon page, and people may have noticed, and we gave out a warning about this too. If you try to subscribe to our Patreon on iOS, you might wonder, holy shit, they're charging me a lot for this Patreon. It's because Apple taxed the fee onto in iOS purchases for Patreon. And
it's more that Patreon
is adding it on.
Because Patreon's like, we can't afford 30% of our revenue for you doing literally nothing, Apple.
Yeah, so Patreon is doing that, right? And we've encouraged people, by the way, if you're listening and want to subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/lemonadestand, do it on desktop or Android.
Yeah.
And make sure you don't pay Apple these fees. But what I was wondering, from the way this lawsuit played out, does that mean they don't get to do that anymore? Or does it mean within the Patreon app they're allowed to link you into a browser to pay for it instead?
So in 2021, I believe. No, 2020, Epic sues Apple and they're like, we are going to try to stop this. Apple fights back. They win the lawsuit mostly. They still get to be the only app store.
Yeah.
But the ruling was that they have to allow other apps to link to an external payment. So that, for example, Fortnite could say, hey, go click a button. It's going to pull up the Fortnite browser. You can buy it there. You get to avoid Apple's fees because that otherwise is anti-competitive, that they aren't allowing any competition at all. And then Apple has basically done like a comical amount to make it impossible for anybody to do that in good faith. Not only did they make you put all of these warnings and shit that was like, you can't make the link to go buy something on a different page very fun to look at or notable.
I heard about that.
Yeah, there's all these like warning signs. It has to get approved. All this crazy stuff. Not only that, they then announced in 2024, we also, Apple, even if, for example, somebody clicks the link in Patreon, in the app, goes to Patreon's website. Patreon manages the entire thing, does all the work, all the tech, all the fees, and then comes back. Apple charges them a 27% commission for the recommendation of having gone through the App Store.
That's like a Honey scam. That's like Honey, the browser app.
It's baffling.
It's almost like
it's truly like, I mean, I hesitate to say evil. It's unbelievable. And so finally, with a lot of pushback this is what they've been doing for 3 or 4 years. They were supposed to allow developers to basically manage payments themselves through their apps. Their apps saying, hey, go do my thing over here. And that way they could dodge this ridiculous fee. And they did the most, like, technically we're following it and we're completely fucking you over and it's no different.
I'm not touching you.
I'm not touching you.
I'm not touching you.
I just want to, so recently, and this is a few weeks ago, I just want to read out the quote from the judge who followed up on this case. Apple willfully chose not to comply with this court's injunction. It did so with the express intent to create new anti-competitive barriers that would, by design and in effect, maintain a valued revenue stream, a revenue stream previously found to be anti-competitive. That they thought this court would tolerate such insubordination was a gross miscalculation. As always, the cover-up made it worse. For this court, there is no second bite at the apple. And then,
so
look at that
base.
shit. It is so ordered. What a fucking Giga Chad from Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers.
She
I would
shot
let her
Tim
bend me
Cook
over a
in
table.
the face.
God, dude, what a fucking Chad. And then this continued. So then the recent update, okay, this refresh, that you might not have seen is that they then were stalling allowing Fortnite back on. So the judge a couple weeks ago was like, this shit needs to stop. not only do you have to stop it right now, you're not allowed to have any tax. That 27% commission has to be 0 now. You have to remove the restrictions on the links people could have in their apps. You can't do that shit anymore. She's basically being way more aggressive because they were so aggressively going against the spirit of the ruling.
So insane.
And she recommended them for a criminal proceeding because the CFO went and lied about how they came up with the 27%. And it turns out he was perjuring himself. And so they also, the past 2 weeks, even after that, have been stalling putting Fortnite back onto the App Store and having all these things. So then there needed to be yet another, it looks like the link, oh yeah, here. So then the same judge had to issue another thing saying, you need to prove immediately and bring somebody to court to prove why you can't put Fortnite back on the App Store immediately. And if this isn't filed by May 21st on Wednesday, it's going to escalate even more. So even after pissing off the judge, lying in court, going through all this stuff, which is now they're potentially going to have to do a criminal proceeding because of the way they've been acting. They also have gotten another reprimand from the same judge for not putting up Fortnite. And all that resulted in finally yesterday, about 20 hours ago, Fortnite is back on the App Store after 5 years.
Hey, system works. Just takes
a few
7 years.
And one of the things that I just wanted to quickly, if you go to, so Tim Sweeney is very passionate, Twitter, he's obviously very biased in one direction on this. But what I think is great is that you can go through his Twitter and he's showing all these examples of other companies who are now saying, because of this ruling, we are now able to add other features. The Spotify people are saying they're now going to add features that weren't sold on the iOS before because it was not tenable for Spotify to offer this. They now can. And so all of these companies that have been absolutely shafted, if you think about like Uber and how expensive, I know Uber is not a likable company, but it is extremely expensive to run a ride-sharing service.
Wait, was it adding the Apple fee to Uber rides?
No, they just had to pay Apple this insane fee. Apple isn't doing shit. They aren't providing the maps. They aren't providing it's nothing. I mean, again, technically they are. It should be like a 3% fee, but this has been unbelievably egregious and really hurt the people who make products. And if we're talking about the economy growing out of the debt, getting it back to the high level stakes, like you have to have people making things and growing. And if Apple is just taking a 30% tax on everybody and hoarding it for no goddamn reason, I am so happy about this. And Google is also following suit. They're also having to do a similar thing.
Yeah, they're in a lawsuit too.
It's not like a full breakup of their monopoly on the app stores, but it in many ways is effectively that. Other ad developers can actually do payments themselves.
So one more thing.
Just say sign up for the Patreon on any platform. Well, actually, no. Sign up on iOS. Click the link that takes you to the Patreon site and do it on the Patreon site because you will pay way less.
One last interesting thing with this that I learned from you was that this is a rare moment where U.S. regulation is ahead of places like the EU. Because the EU famously, switched the iPhone to USB-C, like other changes to Apple that they have required. But with this, this is a US only change right now. In Europe, this does not apply if you use these apps.
Quick correction, that is exactly wrong.
Oh,
wait,
damn.
Yeah, that's super wrong.
Oh, I trusted you.
Wait, tell me, because
I forget the name of it, Digital Rights Act 2022, there was a act by the EU that basically enforced this and said companies on the App Store have to be able to link to other things. So this has been in the EU for like 2 years.
Wow.
Some change of this is not being done in the EU because Apple, in true Apple fashion, literally changed their TOS to say, now you can do this, but only if you're within the United States. Like
So EU has had their own set of rules, but it has been looser. They have, I don't know exactly the restrictions, but the EU in 2022 basically forced iOS to do this. So in Tim Sweeney, in his responses, he was like, this now, the process in the United States is now going to match what the EU is. Okay. They might be slightly different because technically they're going to have different, this is an American injunction by an American judge, but they're now roughly on parity.
Okay.
I
mean, I did see all the things on Sweeney's channel. It felt like the end of Star Wars when the Death Star explodes and they go to every planet. Everyone's
dude, fucking
all the different people were happy.
It's unfathomable to just take money for it. It's crazy to me.
So subscribe to us without giving Apple.